What was your faith background? I'll start with you, Katie, since you are the
easy answer.
great grandchild.
So, my faith background is right here at Whites Ferry Road. Okay. Obviously, Bill Smith was my grandfather. So, I'm the daughter of Starla Bunn, who is his daughter, and
sister of Kim.
And sister of Kim, yes. And so I grew up in this church. I've been here for almost 37 years, which is my entire life.
So what was your faith background, Josh?
Well, the short answer is there was no faith background, right? Oh. So I was not raised in the church. I like to say that I can probably count on two hands, maybe even one, the number of times I was even in a church service growing up. So God was not a topic of discussion in our family. So I was a clean slate.
Knowing that you were marrying someone that's firmly committed to Jesus, and you're trying to figure out who Jesus is and how this is going to work in your marriage, what were your thoughts at that point in time?
Well, I'm pretty stubborn and hard-headed, so it wasn't like she was going to strong-arm me into believing, but my background is that of science, and so I like to follow the evidence wherever that may lead, even if that means changing my worldview. So I was not raised in the church, but I believe that there was a God, because as I looked at creation, I couldn't think of a better explanation than there has to be a God out there. And so I think that allowed me to be open to the gospel, but nobody had ever really clearly laid it out at that point. Now, I saw the way that Katie lived. I saw the way that her family lived. And so there was an attraction there that looked like a better way. But it was going to take some time for me to get there for sure.
How long did it take, Katie?
Let's see. So it took about a year and a half. Well, it took us moving away from Shreveport and back here to West Monroe and getting him in church here. Okay. So the whole time that I lived in Shreveport for 2 years, and he worked every third weekend, and I would come home on those weekends so that I could be here at WFR while he worked. And in the meantime, we did try to find other churches, and there's just no place like this. Yeah.
How did the growth, I guess, accelerate in your life?
Well,
Christian growth.
Sure. The first thing was the fact that I wasn't around the people and the situations that I was in before. So it's a lot easier to get up and go to church.
Explain that a little bit.
Sure.
The situations that you were in.
So I had gotten into a groove over 12 years. I spent 12 years basically living in the bars outside of work. I had a crew that I ran with. I was the driver behind all the sin in that group. And so when you don't have that, suddenly you're looking for a place to belong. And so living here, I didn't have those friends. I didn't have my family here. And so I clinged to what I had, which was Katie and her family. When you're not spending Saturday night in a bar, it's a lot easier to get up and go to church on Sunday morning. And so I found myself here. And eventually that led to getting introduced to Bill. Of course, I had met Bill once or twice just from family situations.
And Bill, in this case, would be your grandfather.
Right, Bill Smith. Yeah. And the story is that it really took about 3 months of being here. So we moved here in October. And by January, looking back on it, I can really see where the Holy Spirit had been working on me the whole time. I was coming back from visiting my family in Shreveport-Bossier area, and felt this overwhelming urge that I know now is the Holy Spirit saying, you need to go see Bill. And so on my way to go home to see her, I jumped off the interstate and I go see Bill. And if you know Bill, Bill has a feel. He knows where you're at, or he had a feel. He's gone on to his reward. But he asked me if I'd be willing to sit down and talk with him. And I did. This was a week later after that initial visit. And he was ready for me. He laid out the gospel, and that night we met the rest of the family up here at church, and Paul Stevens baptized me.
So what would you say, and this will be our last question, what does legacy mean to you?
It's a couple of things for me. One, some people run from a legacy, right? And there are good legacies and bad legacies. And this legacy that I was grafted into, that began with Bill, is one I'm very proud to be a part of. So now, what do you do with that legacy is the question. And for me, it's really two parts. One is begins in your family, right? And so with Kinley, from day one, impressing on her the love of Christ and being a light to her and trying to lead her into faith. But there's a whole different layer to it, which is maybe the World Radio side of it, that Bill impressed upon me from day one of studying with him, that your faith isn't something that you keep to yourself. It's something that you share with others, and you pass on what you have learned to that next generation. And that's a very biblical concept. And so for me, it's a both and. It's passing it on to the generation that's physically linked to me, which is our daughter and hopefully our grandchildren down the line. But also it's about teaching and training up and raising people who are not connected with physical blood, but through the blood of Christ.
The faith legacy that I grew up with, it was both of my parents. But again, my dad grew up in the church, but his faith really increased after he married my mom. Yeah. And so to get to continue that on, I'm blessed to be in the Smith family. And, like you said, Bill was outnumbered. He had Margaret and then 4 daughters who are all very strong personalities also. And then my dad had 2 daughters and my mom. And so, the strong personality comes from the Smiths, and that it's a good legacy though. It's a beautiful legacy. So for me, the legacy, I think as a woman, tends to go back to my family first and foremost. I want that legacy and that piece of salvation in my household.
That is the mission of One Kingdom, and that is to tell people about Jesus so that their families can change into an eternal legacy. Thank you for being with us.